we doing tonight, guys? Yeah. Okay. Well, as they said, my name is Gavriela Reschman, and I'm so excited that you guys are here tonight. I'm going to take this off. I guess I don't need this after all. Yeah. If I haven't gotten the chance to properly meet you, you guys must all go through this. My name is Gavriela, yes, with a V. I'm serious, guys. My mother put that on my birth certificate. Like I said, I'm so excited that you're here tonight. And I'm going to give you a little rundown about me, too, even though they already just said this. But I am a third-year social work major. I was born and raised in Arlington, Texas. I have 6 siblings, guys. I don't know why, but I love them all. And I guess you could say I sing a little here and there on the worship team or something like that. And I have some good dance moves. I was on the drill team for 4 years. And that's about it. Now you know everything you need to know about me. Okay. But in all seriousness, I am incredibly grateful for this opportunity to share the faithfulness and enduring love that God has shown me. But before we get into my story, I want to state a couple of things. My testimony involves some heavy topics, which may be triggering for some of you here. And if at any point you need to leave, please do so. But don't go alone. Grab a friend and walk away and take your time. And if you feel like you need to seek help, let us know so we can support you in that process. Okay. Trigger warning. My testimony will broadly include topics of sexual assault, physical assault, and suicidal thoughts. Going into tonight, I want you all to know that you are loved, and that tonight especially, this is a safe space. I prayed long and hard that God would move in this space, and that he would bring forth anyone who needed to hear my testimony. And I continue to pray that we will feel comforted by God's love, and that our spiritual eyes will be opened. We will have ears to hear and a heart to love. And as we journey through my story tonight, I pray that you all will feel seen. You will feel heard, and you will feel loved, and that God will speak to you in any way that you need him to. I pray love, joy, and peace into everyone's lives tonight. All in his name, amen. Okay, now we got that out of the way, okay? Now, as we settle in, I advise you, get comfortable, sit back, and relax as we take in this immersive story of how loving our God is. You see, I view my testimony as phases, and the phase that I will start off with is little old Gabby or baby Gabby, so think of a little tiny like me, like squished up and all of that. So you see, I live with my mom, my 2 brothers, a stepdad, and my baby sister, which tonight is actually her birthday, her 13th birthday. So I wanted to say happy birthday, Val. You see, I love my family dearly, but this story really isn't about them. It's about the father who wasn't present in my life. Now, let's rewind, because that was a lot. Imagine my mother going into labor. Well, maybe don't imagine that, like, exactly, but essentially, like, my mom is getting ready, she's, like, feeling the contractions, and my grandma's trying to help her, and then my grandma tells her, go put some makeup on and fix your hair and stuff like that. And then they make it to the hospital, okay? And they make it to the hospital, and my mom still can't give birth to me because the doctor's not there, so she has to wait. But then, on November 15th, 9:40 a.m., I was born. I was brought into the world. And when it came to filling out my birth certificate, my mom named me Gavriela, which means, by the way, God is my strength. She also decided to give me her maiden name. These 2 things will be very important later on, so just kind of keep it in the back of your head. Now, if you were listening carefully to that process, you probably noticed that I didn't mention my biological father. And that's because he wasn't there. He wasn't there for my birth or to help pick out my name, and not because he couldn't make it. It was because he chose not to. I believe this is where it all began for me. It felt like I was never good enough for him, and I share this before we get into the overarching events of my story, because I think it's important to understand the relationship I had with him and where it all began. Since my parents weren't together, my mom had primary custody of me. This meant my dad had visitation rights. So every other weekend, for as long as I can remember, he picked me up on Friday nights and dropped me off midday on Sundays. It wasn't easy, but there was very little I could do about it when I was younger. It was confusing for me, especially when everyone else around me seemed to have this picture-perfect family. And I didn't know many people at the time who didn't have both of their parents in their lives, or people who didn't have a relationship with their dad. And eventually, it became routine for me. I got used to going with him when it was his turn. I would get my bag ready after school on Fridays, and I would wait to see if he was coming or not. Even though I spent most of every other weekend with him, I really didn't know him. Most of the time, I would get dropped off at my aunt's, or he'd work on Saturdays, so I would really only spend one day with him. The only things I remember or know about him is that he liked Marvel and DC. He would only eat at breakfast places, and he only liked over easy eggs, and that he was a respiratory therapist, and that he was blood, my biological father, and that was it. I didn't know his character until I got older. I didn't know his favorite food or color. I didn't know if he cared or loved me. I didn't know how much he would lie to me. I didn't know that later on he would rob a part of my innocence. Just as I didn't know my dad very well, he also didn't know me. He didn't know how to spell my name for the longest, and he would spell it wrong, and I would correct him over and over, and nothing. He also didn't know how to spell my last name, and he blamed it on the fact that if I had the same last name as him, he would probably know how to spell it. My dad would call me on the wrong day for my birthday and tell me happy birthday. I just felt like he never truly tried, or at least not with me. You see, on my dad's side, I am the second-born daughter, and the way he treated me was different than the way he treated my older sister. They had a great relationship, a really, really good one, and by no means is that her fault, or am I blaming her for that. It's just the way it was. It's the truth. My dad would talk to me differently than he would talk to her, and he saw so much potential in my sister and stardom in her, and he didn't give me a chance. This didn't make me jealous, but even if it did, it kind of would make sense. It just made me feel sad and alone, and I longed for the kind of comfort and love that he expressed to her. That wasn't the only way he made me feel alone, though. He ostracized me from his side of the family. It felt like I had to work to earn his love or their love. He used my name, my first and my last name, against me as a weapon. Like it was, this security blanket for him. And he would introduce me as his other daughter and then mention that I didn't have his last name. And he would continue to insinuate that I wasn't truly a part of his family or the family because I wasn't a Hernandez. And what do you think that does to a child? Well, I'll answer that for you. For me, it made me feel like I needed to win my father's love, his attention, his affection, and the right to be a part of a family I clearly wasn't. So, in order to do that, I did well in school. I put everything I had into it. I didn't miss school. I got perfect attendance. And I was really sick and I still went to school. Got straight A's and tried so hard to get as many awards as I could. I truly thought this should surely grab his attention. Nothing. So I tried harder. I joined choir, got entered into the art fair / museum, and made sure that teachers had nothing but good things to say about me, his daughter. Surely, this must grab my father's attention. Newsflash, it didn't. I kept running and chasing after his love that didn't come. I just wanted to feel like he cared about me too. I would see how he would look after my older sister, taking her to go get things that she needed for school, taking her on daddy and daughter dates, buying her all these new gadgets. And of course, I was never included or invited. And he would purposely not pick us up at the same time, so that way we couldn't get to know each other, and it was like he was keeping us separate from their relationship. This caused tension between me and my sister, because she couldn't understand why I felt left out or why I was so quiet around them. She didn't see that her father, the same as mine, could possibly treat me like I wasn't his daughter too. At one point, I even tried becoming more like my sister. That didn't help me in the sisters department. It was a spiral. It made me question why my earthly father hated me. Was God punishing me for something? I was so confused. Did I make God mad? How can God love me if my own blood doesn't love me? This continued for years, and these thoughts and questions only grew. This went on until my last year of elementary school, which is when things changed for me, though it is not for the better, at least not yet. When I was in the 6th grade, I was sexually assaulted by my dad. It started off as a typical weekend, which meant that Friday after school, I would pack my bag without knowing of the events that were about to unfold. Even though I didn't know what was going to happen, I remember feeling like something was wrong. I remember him picking me up and driving me to my aunt's house. It was normal. Nothing stuck out to me. Yet I had this knot in my stomach. That night passes, and it is now Saturday. And he spent the day working. I spent the day with some cousins and some aunts. Again, nothing was out of the ordinary. This was a typical weekend with him. Then nighttime falls, and my dad goes out for the night, and I knew this meant he wasn't coming home until the next day. I was right about this. I was supposed to be asleep, but I suddenly woke up to somebody stumbling in. I was in the room down the hall from my dad's room. My cousin had spent the night that night, so I was laying on the floor next to her. I heard loud footsteps approaching, so I closed my eyes tight, and this is when I knew that something was going to happen. I was still sleeping, but I was aware of what was going around me. And suddenly, the door swings open, and my dad pulls me up from off the ground and drags me by my arm down the hall into his room. Well, what happens next is a little graphic, so instead, I'll give a brief rundown. My dad claims he was trying to educate me on sex ed. However, I don't think at 12 years old I needed a physical demonstration. He questioned my knowledge on sex and all things surrounding that topic. He then proceeded to molest me and show me pornography and force me to touch him, all while telling me that he would never hurt me because he's my dad, and I should trust him to not hurt me. Oh yeah, and then after it all, he begged me not to tell anyone about what happened because he could get into a lot of trouble. He held me as he went to bed like nothing happened, and I tried so hard to get up from under his arm. Finally, I was able to escape, and I laid on the floor, crying, trying to process the heinous acts that were just done to me. For so long, I longed for his love, but never in this way. I was too scared to speak up about what happened. Instead, I suffered in silence. I remember telling only one friend, not because I felt the need to, but because they noticed how different I had become. My innocence, God, was robbed, and I felt so ashamed of myself. I felt unclean and unworthy of anything. I didn't want to be alive anymore. I felt no connection on earth or in heaven, and I was so mad at God. I was mad at the world, feeling like I was the only one experiencing this pain while others, or even my friends, got to have a normal life. I battled things I had no knowledge of. I dealt with constant thoughts and desires of wanting to end my life, and I was forced to live with the fact that I had this deep, dark secret. I lived with this secret for about 5 years alone. During that time, I kept it inside, and only my closest friends knew. I was ashamed and wished it never happened. I was filled with so much anger and sadness. This blinded me to the blessings God was giving me during that time. It prevented me from experiencing true joy from the Lord, and my anger only grew, which affected every relationship I had. I lost my light. I lost a part of my faith. But what the enemy meant for evil, God meant for good. And I promise we're about to get there. Like I said, those relationships were impacted. It was hard for me to trust any authority figure because of an imminent fear that they would also use their authority to abuse me. My friends had the great task of not knowing how or what would set me off, and I'm grateful for friends, good friends in my corner, to help me along the way. Friends who were patient, because looking back, I know I was a lot to deal with. The romantic relationships I got involved with involved a lot of mistrust, and I settled for whatever was being put in front of me. I longed for a love in this world, and because of that, I entered into a long-term relationship that I thought would help me get back to who I was before my father abused me. Someone who might help me run back to God. Well, I also was wrong about this too. Instead, being with him became an act of rebellion. My poor mom tried to protect me and prayed endlessly that my eyes would open. Part of me saw it, but I still rebelled. I wanted to grasp the love I thought I was finally going to get to experience. And that didn't last long, because we weren't allowed to see each other or to speak to each other. And during this time, I got more involved with my home church and realized something. I wasn't baptized. I didn't know where I was standing with faith. I had just settled into a new church, and I felt this burning in my chest again. It was like my spirit was coming alive. I felt the Holy Spirit. I couldn't explain it or understand it. I kept blocking the Lord away. Then finally, I felt this presence of the Lord, something I hadn't felt in a long time. And after what had happened, how could I trust the Father above when I couldn't even trust the Father below? I remember breaking down in tears, realizing that maybe I am enough. I realized God was calling me back to him, but I wasn't running towards him. I was walking. I was taking very small steps. But finally, in January 2021, I finally spoke out about the abuse I experienced with my dad, and this pushed me away from my long-term relationship and propelled me towards God. I finally was able to speak freely about my experiences and the emotions I felt. The tug on my heart to get baptized grew stronger, and I finally did that at the age of 17. I went all in for Jesus. However, there was still some refining to do. I was definitely tried by fire. There were things I still struggled to give up, and if you guessed that I couldn't give up that long-term relationship, you'd be right. Part of me wanted him to experience this new life I was living, this second chance I had because of Jesus' sacrifice. I wanted him to experience the love of God that I was beginning to reprogram and relearn in my life. In short, I experienced more abuse in this relationship and made decisions I can't take back. I was physically assaulted on multiple occasions. It was another situation I kept to myself, especially because my sister was hospitalized during this time. Just when things were starting to get better, they quickly shifted. Surely the enemy can't have this much power. First my father who abused me, then someone I loved beating me, and now my sister. My sister being hospitalized was my last straw. I knew things needed to change, so I began praying. I gave it all to God. I took back what was mine. God is my strength. I had to remind myself what I was named after and why my mom gave me a name with this meaning. There had to have been a reason. I chose not to believe the lies of the enemy that my sister was going to die, that love was never going to find me, and that I was never going to escape this cycle of hurt, or that the enemy could take everything away from me. That's when I began to understand who God is compared to the enemy. This helped me to put God first. The only thing that mattered was God. This meant walking away from anything that no longer served a purpose in my life or aligned with God's plan for me. So after a long battle, I walked away from this relationship and everything involving this, and I chased after the love of God. God told me so clearly, I was always with you. Welcome home. And I have never experienced a more welcoming embrace. You see, God allowed me to get burned a little so I can return to him. So my eyes could open and see that he was the love I craved for all along. His perfect love that I didn't earn nor deserve, yet he gave it to me freely, was so enduring throughout every season of my life. He turned my heart that was full of anger and sadness into joy. He calls me by a new name. He miraculously healed me, and not only me, but my sister. He healed her, and that helped me know that God was listening. He was ever so present this whole time. My sister's testimony is a testimony within itself, but her testimony helped me realize and see the true healing power of God. It helped me to trust in God again, fully trust in Him, because what was going on was out of my control and in His hands, and I had to have faith that He was going to heal her. It helped me believe that miracles still happen. I needed this to be true for me too. I needed to heal properly from everything that had happened to me in my life, and God held my hand and guided me through it all. Through all the pain and struggles, I realized that God's love was what I needed all along. His perfect, unconditional love transformed my heart and guided me back to Him, despite everything. His love endured, and it was this love that brought me true healing and peace. As I continue to walk in faith, I am constantly reminded that God's love is enough, and it is this love that sustains me through all seasons of my life. I remember these verses clearly in my journey back to God. Romans 8:18 says, "The pain you've been suffering can't compare to the joy that is coming." I also remember Psalm 56:8, which says, "You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. You have recorded each one in your book." God knew everything I had been through. He loves me so much that He keeps a record of it in His book, but not only for me, but for you too. I'm here tonight to remind you that you are loved just as you are. Every unhealed part of you and broken piece can be healed. I'm here to stand in front of you, or sit in front of you, and say that God leaves the 99 for you, and you, and you, and you, and everyone here. And because of the trials we have gone through, we are pushed more towards God. It makes us human and able to connect to others who have shared experiences. I'm here to tell you that you are not alone. You shouldn't be afraid because Jesus already conquered the grave. He can also turn beauty from ashes. So, come as you are. That's exactly what I did when I came to LFC. And I'm so grateful for all the people here who have supported me in my path. Like I said, I wasn't always the easiest to deal with, and most of my heart held on to anger. However, I knew God placed me here to experience what it means to love God and love others. LFC as a whole has helped me to see in color again. It has given me this space to grow in my relationship with God and to better myself. It has shown me what friendship is and has allowed me to experience a community that will stand behind you. God guided me here because He knew that in Austin, Texas, being here on campus, you guys, all of you, were a part of the love that I was missing. By serving alongside you and committing to loving God and loving others, it has truly transformed me in who I am. You all have played a significant part in bringing me back to life. God is my strength, but He's also yours too. In sharing my story, I hope it serves as a reminder that no matter how difficult our path may be, we are never alone. God's love is constant, even in our darkest moments. My journey back to Him has shown me that there's always hope, healing, and joy to be found. I encourage you to hold on to your faith and trust that God's plan for you is filled with love and purpose. Also be reminded that God will always pursue you. He will constantly leave the 99, and that no matter what you do, you will always find unconditional love through Him. Thank you.